Okay, welcome back to another podcast today with the Warrior Code. I have Ted Lawler here, aka the Manifestation Guy, a mind coach, an entrepreneur, a speaker and mentor who helps people unlock their next level by working from the inside out. So, hi Ted, thank you very much for joining today.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So, for those who don't know, how would you describe what it is that you actually do?
I think the easiest way to describe it is that I use the powers that saved my life to try and help change or save other people's lives. So back in 2017, I was going through depression, and the power of manifestation, visualization, affirmations, and even breath work, they were the collection of powers that saved my life. So now I'm on a mission to share those powers with as many people as I can.
How did you then go from saving your life and I guess a regular life into a mindset and manifestation work? What made that become full time?
It was more so once you experience the power that those tools have, it's very hard to ignore. It's like knowing the cheat codes to life. Once you see them, you can't help but get excited and want to share it with other people. So, yeah, I knew back then in 2017 when I first found these powers, so to speak, I knew back then that it would follow me around. And I basically had no choice. They were stuck with me. Like they followed me everywhere, even in scenarios where I didn't think they'd be needed. I'd always find myself relying on these powers and the toolkit that I built. So it was a very natural progression, albeit a long one from 2017 to pretty much like last year where I really started getting into this. But it was something that was always there. And yeah, went from starting If Only They Knew as a media group for young entrepreneurs in 2017 in my first year at uni. Trials and tribulations, ups, a lot of downs, really dark days, and chopping and changing how If Only They Knew looked as a brand and the offering. But again, it always circled back to what I'm doing now. So I thought, why not just do it properly full time and share this power with the world?
But you know, it's something I'm really excited to get into today, something that I think slept on a lot in everyday and in a sporting context. So for the viewers that are watching, this is going to have a lot of bang for your buck here. So stay tuned, retain, and we'll get into it. So just before we sort of start, can you let me know what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about inner work? You know, if that's in a personal setting or if that's in a sporting context.
I think a lot of people just don't realize the impact of it. People probably assume that yes, you do the inner work, but you need a lot of external factors in play as well. When, in my opinion, it's sort of back to front. If you do the inner work, the external stuff you find doesn't really matter as much. And more importantly, it will come to you when you need it most. So when I started focusing less on external stimuli and external factors to shape how I felt and how I worked in my day-to-day life, and started focusing on within about how I actually feel, what I truly want, what I'm grateful for, what I already have. Once I started focusing on the inside stuff, the outside stuff almost became irrelevant. So it's I think that's the biggest misconception, that you need the outside first and then the inside, whereas you can just focus on the inside and the world around you will shift to match how you feel.
Yeah, you know what, mate? I agree 100% on that. I feel like my experience coming from sort of a poor family, then getting a decent job teaching out in Dubai, I went and I got a Porsche. You know, I was a teacher and I was driving a Porsche. I was trying to buy the designer gear and I knew I wanted to be somewhere in life and I felt it, but I didn't really know how to get there or what to do. And I remember me and my missus, we went to Bali. We went to a place called Gili Tea where there's no cars, no nothing, just a small island. And I was riding a bicycle, like €3 it cost. I pulled in and I got a pizza, some of these weird Asian like chocolate snacks. And I was thinking, I'm enjoying riding this bicycle more than I do driving my Porsche. I was like, what am I doing with that? I remember coming home from that 2 weeks, sold my Porsche, you know, and then used the money to invest. And then I was like, no, I just want financial freedom. And like you're saying, the internal started to tell me what I wanted. I wasn't just grasping onto everything on the outside, seeing what everyone else had. I started to see my path a lot more clear.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. When anyone that I've watched and tried to model, whether it's the Conor McGregors, the Tony Robbins, or even on a smaller, more local level, the people that chase those external things, they get them because they're so addicted with the idea of having it. But from what I've seen, a lot of those people get those external things, and then a few months later, they're like, is that it? Like, they were sort of expecting it to be the be all and end all of their entire life and dream. And then when you get there, you sort of think, oh, it didn't really do much for me. And then they always end up reversing back, like you said, and then going back to the things that were always there. The funniest thing it was, they're always free. So going out in nature, anyone pretty much can do that if you're able to. Literally everything that you really desire or need is free and probably comes from within anyway.
That's it. It's just external validation. And to be honest, like I see a lot of people once they do get it, like you said, maybe change or they feel a certain way. For me personally, the Porsche was something that was massive. I'd only ever seen one supercar my full life growing up, and then a few months later, it's a novelty. It's just something that gets you to work and gets you back. Now I've got a run-down car, to be honest with you, mate, and it brings me the same amount of joy as the Porsche. I remember seeing a podcast with Tony Bellew, and he said when he made his first multi-million, he checked his bank account and he wanted to go to the ATM machine because he wanted to see the numbers. And when he saw it, it was just a bit deflating. It was just a bit like, oh, well, I've been chasing this my full life and what now? Because money is just a number. Yeah, it brings you a lot of opportunity, but it ain't going to just bring happiness. If you think you get the money and you get the happiness, it's not really how it works.
Yeah, that's it. Tony Robbins, he said that in America there were studies done, and the people claimed that winning the lottery would be the greatest thing to happen to them. But the actual stats show that the people that have won the lottery have been the most depressed. And in that same study, the worst thing that could happen to someone was losing their limbs. And he showed an example of the quadriplegic that was basically living the best life ever. He was going skydiving, diving in the water, doing all these crazy things. So it just shows how contradicting our goals often are. But sometimes I think you need that almost naivety and perhaps stupidity to sort of think that the external stuff is amazing, to go on that journey to get there and learn everything you need to know to set you up for the real journey of going within instead of.
Yeah. You know what, that it's very interesting because my last episode I just done with a boy called Matt Edwards. I don't know if you're aware of Matt. He's a boxing amputee, so he lost his leg in a horrific motorbike accident, and before that he was addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, not really living the life. You know, he had a bit of a hard past, and after the amputation he started boxing, and now, mate, he's leaps and bounds. He's got a wife, he's got kids, he's happy, he's fit, he's not on any alcohol or drugs, you know. And it's like you're saying there, sometimes what you think you want is what's going to bring you down and vice versa. So just moving on here, we just want to talk about some things that maybe fighters don't know about and what they don't know about in terms of success. Most fighters think that success comes from like grinding harder, you know, just being the hardest worker in the room. But what do you believe is actually holding back most talented boxers?
I think a lot of it has to come down to the mindset. If you look at any boxer, 9 times out of 10, they've got a very similar training regime. They go to the gym, they run in the morning, they eat even the same quality of food. Look at it on a black and white perspective. If they're all doing the same in the gym, doing the same on the runs, doing the same nutrition and eating and supplements, then there's only one factor and one variable that can make them rise above that group or go below that group. And the only variable is the mindset. If you're not training your mindset and you're doing everything that everyone else is doing, surely there's no way that you're going to be able to compete.
Yeah, 100%. Like you're saying, a lot of boxers, their routines are pretty much carbon copy, and
Yeah.
it's like you're leveling up at the same time. But when I watch things like Drive to Survive, or even when I look at tennis, for example, their mindset is all they talk about. Now, for Drive to Survive, Formula One, if many of viewers don't know it, there's only 20 spots available. So that's only 20 spots in the world out of all the leagues that do that. Now, what separates them in skill is little to nothing. It's mindset, and they're always talking about staying in the zone or remaining calm and not letting things bug you, you know. And it's on to the next. And Djokovic as well, he's massive on talking about mindset. Like I said, boxing, I don't really understand what's happening. It's one of the, if not the hardest sport in the world, but yet no one's training their mindset. No one's working on this. I remember watching videos of Vasily Lomachenko when he was younger, and his dad was doing a lot of mindset stuff, a lot of concentration things, and look at where he's ended up, one of the best amateurs of all time and world champion. Whereas I go down to the local gyms or I speak to the athletes coming through and it's just fitness, fitness, fitness.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example as well of, in terms of that, how mindset can sort of set you above and beyond anyone else. Have you heard of the term mental rehearsal?
I don't know too much about it, but I've definitely heard the term.
Yeah, so mental rehearsal is basically just using like what we say as visualization, but specifically looking at gaining a specific skill. There's a study where the two groups, one group were consistently contracting their finger back and forth for 5 1 hour sessions for 4 weeks straight, and they got 30% stronger because obviously they're constantly contracting their fingers and the muscles are moving, and we all know how that works. That's no surprise to anyone. But the surprising thing was the second group in this study were doing mental rehearsal. So they weren't actually moving their fingers. They were just imagining and visualizing that they were doing that exact movement. And because the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what isn't, that group got 22% stronger. So it's not as strong as the people actually doing it. But can you imagine how much time and stress you'd save if you were just mentally rehearsing rather than actually doing that? But then imagine if you were actually doing the weights, you're in the gym, doing the physical work, the physical running, whilst at the same time you added the extra layer of the mental rehearsals, you're going to get results above and beyond anyone else.
Mixing that mental rehearsal and you're mixing that workout as opposed to just stacking all your eggs in the workout basket. The studies are essentially showing that you're going to just grow so much quicker that way. And I guess the output's a lot less as well.
Yeah, that's it. Because the thing, if I'm just sitting here now, as I'm talking to you, I could also sort of be visualizing, right, when I get in that gym, I'll be doing this, and I could be visualizing myself doing the weights or slipping the punches. And when I get into that gym, I've already done the work, so my body knows exactly how to perform, and would already the subconscious would already think that it's done the work already. So you're literally getting double the amount of work in, which is quite mad that not enough boxers implement that.
Yeah, you know what? Like, it may be similar, it may not be related. I used to live my fight, and I mean like 1,000 times. I would sit every day in school and I'd think about it, and it'd be everything from the walkout, everything to being in the ring, then the first minute full sequence, and then I'd do it again, but I'd play out different punches and different combinations, and I'd play it out again and again and again. And with me, I've got ADHD, so I was very easy to go into that sort of state of flow and think of that. Like one of the more experienced boys in the gym pretty much pulled me aside and was like, look, you shouldn't be doing that. By doing that, you're setting yourself up for failure. He said, if I go in the ring and something happens that I'm not expecting, then it throws my full thing. But I was trying to let him know, but I go through every scenario. So when I go in there, I feel like I've done it 1,000 times. And he told me no. And funny enough, I'd won every fight up until that point. I stopped doing it and I started taking losses. So do you feel like the advice he gave me would have been good at the time, or do you think it should be the opposite?
Yeah, it's a I get where he's coming from, because you don't want to get caught off guard. I guess that you could say that about anything, even physical training. You could be training one specific way, and then in the fight, your body's having to rely on a specific way of moving that you didn't specifically train for. So I guess there's an argument for both. But there are loads of studies where, again, mental rehearsal, boxers in particular, karate students, loads of different combat fitness examples of people that have used mental rehearsal to improve their speed, even if it's by a couple seconds. You know more than anyone, a couple seconds being able to slip quicker than the opponent is what's going to get you not only to the final bell, but probably give you the win as well. If you're consistently a couple seconds quicker than your opponent, then you know you're going to win. So I think that's where that side of it comes through. So if I had to pick one, I'd definitely say go with the mental rehearsals, because even if you just did that one thing and mentally rehearse the slipping, you're going to get faster. It's a fact that every single study has shown that you will get faster. So why would you not implement that? But yeah, in terms of being prepared for every scenario, I get it, but you can only do so much. You know, you can only sort of focus on certain aspects and improve certain skills.
Yeah, so maybe for a skill related, it's something that should be implemented. So
Yeah.
just for the viewers at home, say I'm a 15-year-old boy right now and I'm hearing mental rehearsal, right? And that's going to help me be better with my skills. We'll just use slipping because we've seen that. What now do I have to do sitting at home? How do I incorporate and include mental rehearsal?
Typically, the best way to do it is by getting your brain into a state where you can infiltrate your subconscious. So the conscious mind see it as almost like the barrier. If you're thinking about slipping, your conscious mind is going to be in beta state and it's going to be thinking, but beta state is just the level of your brainwave activity. So beta is sort of like when you're wide awake. Because you're in beta, typically when you're wide awake, especially in training, your brain's going to come up with every way of trying to convince you certain things, good and bad. So if you're standing there saying, oh, if I slip like this, your brain's going to go, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? So my sort of opinion on it would be try to lower that brainwave activity, which you can do by just sort of getting into a meditative state. So cover any external stimuli to tell your brain that you don't need to be so proactive in searching out information in the world and listening out for things. So like put headphones on, a blindfold on, listen to some calming music, and there's many different tapes you can get online, and get yourself into a state of lower brain activity. So you move from beta through to alpha and into like theta state, where you can imagine your conscious mind is the barrier. As you lower your brainwave activity, your conscious mind, that barrier sort of drops down. And that's exactly where you want to be to get these things into your head. So you can fill your subconscious mind with anything you want, essentially. And because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not, you can literally lie to yourself and hypnotize yourself. It's a form of self-hypnosis. So drop your brainwave state by blocking out any external stimuli, listen to the tapes, lower your conscious mind with your headphones on, start visualizing yourself slipping. What that is going to do is make your subconscious mind believe that you are actually doing those movements. And if you imagine yourself just as you would normally, like you can sort of recall memories of when you're in the ring sparring, for example, and you can recall memories of when you slipped. Start doing that and how it feels to be back in that moment again, and try and recall the timing of how you typically would slip, and then eventually get faster and faster and faster. And you don't actually have to move your head or your body at all. Just play it back in your mind, because your mind doesn't know if you're doing it or not. Because you're in your subconscious, it just assumes you're doing it, and gradually get faster and faster and faster until you're literally like Neo in the Matrix, and you just like slip, 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 slip. And the more you do that, especially if you do that at a night time when your brainwave activity is naturally lower anyway, the more you do that over a few weeks, you'll match the levels of the results from those studies I just mentioned, where you will get faster and faster and faster. And when you put it into practice, into real life, you will notice the difference. So that's a very succinct way of getting into that meditative state and putting that mental rehearsal into practice.
So guys, that's an absolute gem there, because like we said, a lot of people have the same routines. How many people do you know that are lowering their brain activity and then going into a state where they're doing mental rehearsal? That's something now that you can start implementing. Like that was just suggested, maybe later at night, you can start rehearsing that, going through your mental rehearsal, and what that's going to do from a study-based approach is going to actually improve certain skills that you're trying to work on. So definitely start implementing that into your game. So identity, obviously we always hear the word identity is key, but what does that actually mean, and how do you think that identity affects results in life and in sport?
I think it's a big part of it. Again, it all comes down to that mindset side of things. If you believe you are a certain way, a lot of people get ego mixed up with arrogance, when all ego is just the way you define yourself. So however it could be. So I'm a young person that's into fitness, therefore I perceive myself to be a fit person, for example. That forms part of my ego, because the ego is just a package of how you present yourself to the external world and to yourself as well in terms of your beliefs. So if you believe that you are a certain level of athlete, for example, you will get stuck at that level no matter how hard you train, because you're naturally going to hit mental blocks, where if you're training, you'll stop the plank before the timer goes, for example, or you'll slow down before the end of the round because you know it's coming. Those little shavings off success is really going to slow you down. And the reason you'll be doing that is because your identity is your X level of fighter. Whereas if someone's saying they've just started in boxing, I am already a world champion, I know I'm going to get there, like Muhammad Ali said before he ever was champion. If you start talking like that, that's going to form your identity to match the identity of a world champion. So you're not going to shave elements of your success. You're not going to stop before the timer goes. You're going to keep going. You're going to do an extra rep. And that whole identity is going to inform your beliefs and your actions to match how you perceive yourself. So it's a massive part of it. Like when I've spoken to Fabio Wardley, who's now a champion boxer, I spoke to him 5 years ago. If you watch that interview, he was already talking about how he plans to become the champion, because in his mind, he's already there and he knows he just got to go through the motions and get there. And it's no surprise. He obviously put that identity into practice, into training, and he ended up being a champion and looks like he's going to get on to become a world champion as well. So identity is a massive part of how you sort of perceive yourself and therefore how you interact with the obstacles in front of you.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like a lot of people, maybe just not in the fighting community, but we're all programmed to have such a negative identity and a negative outlook and everything. Now, myself, growing up, I was a massive complainer, right? I complained about everything. Oh, I feel sick. Oh, I don't feel like I've got any energy today. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm injured. But guess what happens? I just ended up tired. I ended up injured. Whatever you speak out sort of comes back to you. I remember my full life, my mum went on about how she has the worst luck in the world, and then I inherited that, and I always had the worst luck in the world, and it wasn't until I met my partner who's clued up with this. She said, if you say that and you believe that, then that is your truth. So I started to change that, and now I don't know the last time something that's unlucky's happened, and I've completely changed that sort of way how my life is going simply by just changing how I speak to myself and what I think.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that as well, because you mentioned there about how your words and your thoughts and beliefs can actually make you sick, which they 100% can. Like loads of studies show that if you think that you get sick often, you're going to get sick often. But on the other side, the studies show that elevating your emotional state for just 10 minutes a day for 4 days will strengthen your immune system by more than 50%. So there's a good solid fact to show that your brain and your thoughts does actually impact your physical body. It's the same with cortisol as well. The more stressed you are, the more you release cortisol, which is the obviously the stress chemical. It's the actual chemical that gets released if you're in that state of mind and state of body, and that also impacts your how fat you are, basically, because it has everything as a massive chain reaction. That's why I say everything comes down to mindset, because 9 times out of 10, if you sort of follow from the output all the way back to where it first started off, it's going to be something to do with the way your mind's set up, which in turn impacts how your body and your nervous system is moving on a day-to-day basis, which is going to impact the amount of chemicals you release, which is going to impact how ill, happy, sad, depressed you are. So it all stems from mindset.
It's so important. It's so important. The fact that this isn't sort of common knowledge, or we're not even really taught this at school, is just, it's crazy. But if you are wanting to get the best out of your performance, if you are wanting to make a career in the fight game, then it's something that needs implemented. It's something that needs looked at. Now, we're all at different stages with our mindset, but that doesn't mean we can't improve. You might feel like you're starting behind, or you have no idea, and I'm now 18 years old. What do I do with this? Just do a bit of research, listen to the rest of this. We'll give you some tips here, some things you can work on, and then dive deeper. And you can really start to improve your own performance, your own life, your own happiness and well-being through simple methods here.
Yeah, that's it. And I would just say as well, there is something I haven't studied too much, but again, I know from looking at the studies that are beginning to come out that how impactful your mindset can be, to the point where potentially it impacts the food and how your body reacts to the food that you take in. So there's a Japanese study that came out a few years ago. 2 different groups. One went to a comedy show and one went to a really boring lecture. So obviously the one at the comedy show, they're all laughing, they're all amongst each other, they're smiling, giggling. You can imagine what it's like. Same with the boring lecture. There's no laughing, there's no movement, there's no change in the body. You're just zoning out, listening, bored out your mind. What the interesting thing about those two groups were, after the activities, they went and ate the same exact foods, and from the boring lecture, their blood sugar levels rose by double the group that went to the comedy show. So they ate the exact same food, but the group that went through the negative experience had double the amount of blood sugar levels than the one that went through the positive experience. The positive experience actually altered 23 gene expressions, which is just sort of how your brain and stuff is set up at the time. So just by altering those gene expressions, by interacting with the world slightly differently, it's actually completely changed how they've taken in the exact same food. How I see it is it a case of someone who's in a really positive state could potentially eat a load of rubbish and still come out healthier than the depressed person who's eating the most healthy, like, nutritional diet in the world? Now, I'd imagine there's some sort of spectrum where it balances out, but I do feel like there's going to be more studies coming out to prove that mindset literally is everything, where you could eat a load of crap and still come out healthier than the person that's eating a load of good, as shown by that Japanese study. So just wanted to get that out there because I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, you know what, mate? I'm loving the studies. I done a sports science degree at university, so it's been a long time since I've been talking about studies back and forth. So you know what? The mind is so powerful. A lot of people really don't realise. Like you said earlier, like say someone gets sick, it can be stemmed back to somewhere, you know, and it's usually to do with mindset. If you're telling yourself that you are fit, that you are healthy, if you're at top of the game, that you are a champion, not you're going to be a champion, you are a champion, these things will come back because you start to believe that. Even if you look in the mirror and you've had 2 fights and you go, I'm a world champion, I'm a world champion level boxer, you're going to think it's stupid, aren't you? You're going to think, oh, I've only had 2 fights. But if you keep saying that, then you put yourself in that realm and you become that.
Yeah, well, you're also, if you're in that mindset already, the subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and not. That's a given. So you're gonna hypnotize yourself to believe that anyway. But what, in terms of a practical effect, is going to have is there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, which is like your brain's filter. So the more you think I'm a champion, I will be a champion, and you think of yourself as an elite athlete, your brain is going to look out for the things in the real world that relate to that. So that may be as simple as always noticing like the champion belts in the gym, and that will help you sort of visualize even further. Literally every single aspect of your life that relates to being a champion is going to get relayed back to your brain. So you're going to be looking out for opportunities, and you'll spot the opportunities that guide you down that path to become a champion even quicker and better than the person that isn't even wired that way.
Yeah, and something that's sort of similar to that. I remember seeing a stupid Instagram video a while back. It turned out not to be that stupid. It said, let's do like a test. It was like, turn around now and look at everything that's green in your room, for example, and remember all those things that are green and come back. And it was like, now, how many red things did you see? And I was like, nothing, because you're focused on the one, you then don't see the other. So if you are someone who's been negative, critical of your performance, always down and depressed, then you're not going to be seeing those opportunities. You know, I guess that relates in boxing and it relates in life.
Yeah, that's it. And there's also the that Tony Robbins quick experiment he did where he got the guys to like stretch their arm far back as possible, and on the first time they get like a little bit just behind their like right shoulder with their right arm, they twist it round, and they're like, no, we can't go any further, we're stuck. And then he gets them to think and visualize going even further than they've ever been, and then what happens on the next turn, their right arm comes all the way like full 360 almost. So it shows the power of setting up your brain to believe that things are more possible than you ever thought. Even if you don't even know that to be true, I don't see any harm in hypnotizing yourself to believe that things are more possible than you think, because your brain is only gonna ever work to try and make you right. It never tries to make you wrong in that sense. So it will be like, you know what? I've never seen any references to show that you can go that far with your arm. But as you're saying, it's so true, and you can, and you've just visualized it, it must be true. So your arm's going to go further than ever before, which just blows my mind that you can just trick your brain that much and at your body.
It's because it's a lot of self-belief in it, and like you're saying, you're tricking the brain. A lot of the times in my life, I can't. That was the big phrase that I'd always use, and for example, just my missus, right, she was getting into an ice bath and she hates the cold. She's like, I can't. But if you say I can't, then you just can't. There's 100% chance that you're not going to be able to do it. Now, if you say I can and you do it, maybe you still physically can't do certain things. Maybe you still physically don't have the skill and what your respective discipline. But if you're saying you can, then you're so much more susceptible to being able to do it. She said I can. She got in. I think she got a 10-minute one. But I see a lot of people that are I can't. Even if you believe you can't, it's because you've set that notion. I guess you need to start believing that you can, and it comes.
Yeah, even Joe Wicks does it on his hit videos. I was doing it this morning, and just before he started the rep, he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to finish this." And what happens? He wasn't able to finish it. But if he would have said, "Right, last one, I'm going to make sure I get this done," 9 times out of 10 he gets it done. So yeah, it's just about setting up your brain beforehand to sort of work in your favour.
What we're saying to those who are watching at home, it's not necessarily that now from this moment on you must be I can. It's just try and recognise when you're using those negative terms, those negative views, and try and change that to a positive. Now, maybe you're only going to start to get 2 out of 10, but that will grow to 3 out of 10, 5 out of 10, and before you know it, you'll start to change your identity, change your mindset to just make yourself more successful, whatever it is you want to be. If it's fighting community, if it's just life, if it's business, if you go positive, it always trumps negative.
Yeah, and there's another little method to help with that. Again, just making sure you're implementing that sort of mindset on a day-to-day basis. I created a method called rooting, which is where you basically root certain ideas into real world. So, for example, if I say, every time I see a red car, I'm going to say 3 things I'm grateful for. Every time I see a yellow car, I'm going to say 3 positive affirmations, or blue car. So when you're out in the public, your brain's going to get used to it. At first, you're going to forget straight away. But once you start doing this on a day-to-day basis, your brain's going to get so used to it. Every time you see that specific color car, you're going to get yourself into the habit of being grateful, saying your affirmations, feeling positive. And it sounds so simple, but those are the core things that are going to help literally hypnotize your brain and put you into a peak state where you're going to be able to get that extra inch, extra second, extra rep, whatever it's going to be. It's going to set you up to succeed rather than to fail.
You know what? This stuff does work. I know there's probably going to be a lot of people here listening that's thinking this is airy-fairy or artsy-fartsy. You probably get that a lot. Now, I was definitely one of those people before, but something I can say that may not be related here, but I was a massive overthinker. I'm very analytical with everything. Boxing, life, I overthought everything to every possible outcome to that I then just create the worst possible outcome because that is what I've seen and that's what I've lived many times in my brain. Now, I try to get into a position where I stopped overthinking because what I then was aware of was I'm living things in my brain that's not actually happened, which is not actual reality. Therefore, I'm already experiencing the trauma of it, even though it's not happened. So what I started doing was when I started to overthink and I could feel it, and when I recognised it, I started going, oh no, like stop. And I actually started tapping my head. And I'd done that for like a few weeks, maybe a few months, to the point now I'm not saying I never overthink anything, but I'll be honest, like 95% of the things I don't overthink and I don't have to do this anymore. I feel like I hypnotised myself to stop doing that and I got myself in a position where now when something does start, I go, that's not good. And I just shut it off. Whereas before I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to watch it,
Yeah, that's it. I think the best phrase to sort of encapsulate it all is you're trying to remember the future. So you're trying to throw yourself into the future timeline and imagine what it's like to be there and almost work backwards. And if you do that in a meditative state, your subconscious isn't going to know that didn't actually happen in the future. In its mind, it's thinking you've already gone and done and achieved everything you're visualizing. So if you go all the way to the future and work backwards, your brain's just going to believe it's happened. Because in quantum physics, everything exists at every one time in every place and not at all. It's all science based, even though it's so confusing. It's the quantum side of things where everything exists at any moment. And your frequency, I believe, is the thing that alters you like a radio station. As you're changing that little dial, you hear the buzz, you hear the static, but then every now and then you'll get to that right radio station, which is your dream self in the future. And once you hit that dial, that's it. You'll become obsessed and you won't ever want to stop any of these practices.
Just touching lastly on this segment, a wee bit about the subconscious and self-sabotage sort of running in the back of your head. Yeah, how can you become aware if you are subconsciously self-sabotaging yourself?
That's the difficult thing, in all honesty, because I think this is going to divide some people, but I sort of see the world as some sort of like Matrix type thing. If you look at the film as an example, and almost as a template to draw from, it makes a lot of sense, where people go under the radar for so long and don't even realize anything. They're just so caught up in their world and their life. They don't realize certain things, which I don't think they're to blame as such, because you can't judge someone for not changing something they don't even know they can or should change. So I think a lot of people are under some sort of hypnosis almost, where the hypnosis has come from external factors. Like, I'll give you a practical example. Every morning I hear the ITV News or Good Morning Britain, and all I ever hear, I'll just hear key words as I'm going about my day. Murder, all negative things that I won't say on here because you'll probably get banned, but a lot of negative things every single day for like 3 hours straight. And it's like, how does no one realize that they're literally being hypnotized by that? With the example of the subconscious in the evening, it's the same with your brainwaves in the morning as well. You're going to be in that theta delta state where your subconscious is open to anything and everything. So if you're in that subconscious hypnotic state and you're listening to murder, this, that, terrorism, etc., you're going to start your day with all that inside your mind, and that's going to set off your RAS to focus on who could be a murderer, who could be a terrorist on the tube, who's going to cause this damage to me, who should I be wary of based on what the news has said to me that morning. So I think a lot of people are just under that spell. I don't know how they wake up, in honesty. I don't know how I woke up. I believe I've woken up to it. I don't know how that process works, whether you get chosen, whether it's random, or whether you need to rely on someone else to sort of wake you up, like in the Matrix where he gets offered the 2 pills. But in answer to your question, I think a lot of us are under a spell, and it requires other people to try and wake them up and show them the light. Once you've seen that light, you're not coming back to reality.
Yeah, you know what? This is starting to wish we're not doing the podcast here, because I could talk about that all day. You know, I could talk about that all day. And for me, personally, I'm trying to be a bit selective on what I'm doing here, because I believe what you believe there, and the more you speak on it, the more you talk about it, the more attention you bring to yourself. And we know what happens, bring a lot of attention to yourself. But 100%, when you're talking about hypnosis, I guess the way I've seen it is programming, and I guess that's the exact same thing. Our brain is a supercomputer, so if you are showing yourself negative things, that's going to happen. Me living in Dubai, this is the safest country in the world, I'll be honest. Nothing happens here. I'm from Glasgow, where a lot of stuff happens. And when I went home, from the airport to my house is an 11-minute drive, and I heard about 3 separate murders on the radio, right? And that's 11 minutes. Now, in Dubai, you don't hear anything like that, and everything's all positive, and you know. But at the same time, it gives you a better mindset. It informs your brain a lot better. Now, a lot of people are brainwashed. For me personally, school is brainwashing. Why aren't we taught about taxes? Why aren't we taught about these stuff? If you hear someone going outside into nature and breathing in the air and meditating, you think hippie, you think airy fairy. We're taught for a red flag to go off, and why we're taught for that, we can surmise, but essentially I think it's because it's extremely beneficial for us, and it does wake us up out of the way our system is needed to be, you know. So guys, like you said there, maybe other people need to wake you up. Maybe you're not going to be understanding that your subconscious is doing stuff, but a lot of us do have best friends. A lot of us do have people that we're super close with that can maybe start to identify when you're doing certain things. Like, for example, you keep running back to your ex, you know, and people are like, don't do that, but yet you do it. You can have someone there recognising it. And if not, watch podcasts like this. You know, I guess you've got a lot of content online that's talking about these sort of things. And when you're seeing people do that, you replicate that own behaviour yourself.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's a big part of why I've transitioned, if only they knew, into what it was to what it is now, a free charity, a free wellness hub, where I put all these different kinds of methods, some that are quite obvious, some that are a bit obscure, but all of them work. That's a big part of what I'm doing now to try and help wake people up. And then hopefully it has a chain reaction where they share a method with their friends, and something as simple as a bit of breath work or bilateral stimulation, which I'll put up on my Instagram for those listening to look into as well. There's a lot of different things that can have a massive impact. That's now my life mission: share the power of manifestation with the world, as it saved my life. So hopefully it can help wake someone up and save their life too.
Definitely, I believe it can. I've done a lot of things unintentionally. I've done a lot of things that served me to the best and so far beyond anything I could have imagined already. Yeah. I'm not talking about riches. I'm talking about literally how I feel in my own head, because a lot of the things that I did growing up, I wasn't self-harming myself, but I'm self-harming myself with my thoughts and the way I'm experiencing everything. Where if that's talking to a friend or going somewhere, everything was a negative outlook. Now, something we have the power to change, even though you don't believe you can. So it's just listen to these tips, take in the content, and be open-minded. Don't sit here right now going, because a lot of it is science-based, you know. And if you have two people sitting here right now saying, I used to view this way, and this is how I view it this way, and it's so much better, and we're not making any money off of this, why look at that and go, oh no, you know what, that's stupid. It's not, and you can change. You can change any belief you have right now. Okay, so I'm moving on, a manifestation and subconscious rewiring. So can you just explain, I know a lot of people have heard the word manifestation, especially myself, but what in real terms, how does that actually work? What does manifestation mean?
So in my mind, manifestation is just the process of creating things that may not exist in the physical world by creating them in your internal world, which is your mind first. So that's a very simple definition. I've included different elements into that because, like breath work, visualization, I believe they all sort of help you manifest a greater life and a greater aspect of your health and your mental well-being as well. Just creating things using your mind and bringing it from your mind into the external world.
Just for the viewers, do you think things like manifestation, visualization, even intentions, scripting, bringing that into a performance-based, just isolating into that performance-based for a boxer or a jiu-jitsu practitioner, do you think that's beneficial for them?
Yeah, 100%. I think it can impact every aspect of their training, whether that's the mental side, the physical side, like we've already said with the mental rehearsal, but like even like calming you down. So I mentioned earlier about like the bilateral stimulation where you can calm yourself down before a fight. So just by using a tennis ball and putting it in one hand and stretching it as like into the corner of your right eye in your right hand, passing it over into the middle and passing it over into your left hand and stretching the tennis ball out until all the way until you can see it in the left hand corner of your left eye. Just that simple process of stretching out your vision, so to speak, and stretching out your arms, that process switches between your left side of your brain and the right side, and that switch actually helps calm your brain. So little simple things like that can impact whatever aspect of training you want to work on.
I never got nervous before any of my initial fights. I was just ready to go, wanting to get out there until I took my first ever loss. After I took my first ever loss, bag of nerves. It was really hard to calm down, and I guess a lot of people are burned out by that, and a lot of people aren't. So something that wasn't planned at all is I've got a tennis ball right here. So is it okay if you take me through a very quick, guided practical of that?
Let's go for it, yeah.
So random, I've got a tennis ball here. So I'm getting ready to go into the ring and to fight. What should I be doing with this tennis ball?
So now imagine at this stage, let's just say you're not doing any other work or any of the methods I teach. So at this stage, you're panicking, you're thinking, what if I get knocked out? What if I slip? Like you're thinking stupid thoughts because you haven't done any of the other pieces of work. So you're solely relying on this. It's going to sound mad because it looks so simple, but again, it doesn't matter how it looks externally. It's about what it's doing internally. So if you put the ball in the middle of your hands together and then put it out in front of you, like stretch your heart, then what you're going to do is just let the ball fall into your right arm and stretch your right arm all the way out.
So like this.
Let go of it with the left hand. Yeah, that's it. And that's it. And stretch it out. So then in the very corner of your right eye, you're going to be able to just focus on the ball. try and see it in your like far peripheral vision. And then once you can sort of see it as far as you can stretch your arms, bring your right arm back to meet your left hand in the middle, and then do the same with the left hand. Put it all the way over to the left.
So just
And
to
then,
show the camera, it would be like this.
yeah, that's it, as far as you can go. So then the corner of your left eye can just about see like the green blur in the peripheral vision. And you just swap it back. So then meet it in the middle again, bring it over to the right. Now, this sounds so stupid. That process that literally switches from the right brain activity to the left. And that switch basically rewires the brain quite literally to take your mind off of the real world and focus on that switch. And it's something so simple like that, but it helps calm down your brain. By not knowing the impact of that, if I walked into your dressing room before a fight and said, oh, here, mate, just swap the tennis ball between your hands, you're going to be like, no way. But once you understand the science behind it and that it does actually work, doing that for, say, 30 seconds, a minute, however long it takes to sort of switch your brain off for you, it has a massive impact, because then you go out so calm, you've forgotten about the fight for that 1 minute you was moving a tennis ball. So something really quite silly like that has a massive impact on your anxiety and your mental health.
I think that's amazing, because you do need to focus on it. And I guess when you're looking over there, you said there was a switch between the right side and the left side, but that's also my assumption, waking that up, so you are about to now go out and perform, so you're maybe putting yourself in a better baseline to be able to call on all your skill set and use both sides of the brain to perform to a higher level.
Yeah, that's it. Because there's a thing called the autonomic nervous system, which for years, because it was autonomic, everyone thought and assumed that you can't take control of it. So it is what it is. So it's your fight or flight system. So back in the day, if you were a caveman, you get chased by a lion, your fight or flight obviously has to switch on. You have to decide whether you're going to fight the lion or run. And then you'd go away, go back to your cave, and then you'd move from fight or flight, and you'd sort of ease off into that, back into that neutral state of the nervous system, from the sympathetic more towards the parasympathetic. So by doing that method, you're calming down your brain, and you're going to move from that more into a neutral mode where you're still a little bit amped up, but you're not like overly amped up where everything's going to stress you out. You can also do that using breath work, like the box breathing, 4 simple breaths in, four simple breaths out, for four times. That's going to be more than enough to start easing you off a little bit and get you out of that overdrive mode.
For me personally, when I first ever had my first fight, I went in there and it was not what I was expecting. You know, I don't know if you've ever sparred in your life, or had a fight in your life, but there's a lot going on. And when I went into that fight, it was a completely different view, because I was so hyper focused. I know people are going to think this is hard to believe unless you've had the fight, but I couldn't hear a single thing. You know, I could only see the boy's face. I never saw the referee once. I never saw the ropes once. It was just a face, and I was like, "What's going on here?" Now, I remember my third fight, I saw the top of the gloves, the head to the top of the gloves. And then my next fight, I saw the full arm. And then before you know, you start to hear certain things. Now, I got told that was experience, but do you think that's also mindset? Do you think that's putting yourself from a fight or flight stage more into a neutral zone because you've experienced it?
That's it. What all that is, because you were focusing more like initially like on the things that mattered. That's just part of that natural evolution. Like back in the day, you would have relied on the eyes of whatever it was you was looking at to determine whether they saw you. Therefore, if they saw you, are they more of a threat now? But also their movements. If a lion's looking at you, or if it's looking at your feet, for example, then all of a sudden it locks into your eyes, you know something's about to go down. So the eyes were the biggest teller of an understanding of how to interact with the world. Obviously, as we've got more civilized, you don't need to sort of stare into someone's eyes to work out their intentions anymore. Things have got a lot easier. But all that is your nervous system thinking it's back when your ancestors were a caveman. The more your nervous system eases off, the more your vision's going to get wider and wider, because you're gonna feel more comfortable not having to worry about, is he staring in my eyes, what's his next move? Then you can move over to the gloves, and before you know it, you'll get into the ring and see the full picture, where you can see the people in the crowd, because your brain will be so relaxed potentially. But imagine if you had been visualizing those fights, using the spars as mental reference. If you kept visualizing those fights, you would have got into the ring potentially with more clarity. because you would have already run through 100 times what the guy is going to look like, what the ring's going to look like, what the people in the crowd are going to look like. So the more experience you've got and the more you visualize and mentally rehearse, the more that process is going to get easier and a lot less stressful, and therefore a lot less minute in terms of what you can see.
Okay, so just for practicality to finish up this segment, what is a daily practice, say, that a fighter could use to start reprogramming their subconscious?
I think a mix of what I've said in terms of best practice, try and get into a meditative state. Best times to do that are in the morning and evening, just before you go to bed, because your brainwave activity is at its lowest. So do that, use that state to your advantage and start visualizing. Visualize either something to do with like mental rehearsal with the slips or the punches or the movement, or visualize something that's going to get your feelings heightened. Visualizing holding up the belt and use that elevated emotion. What you can then do with that elevated emotion is anchor a trigger. Whenever I get into that meditative state, visualize, and when you feel that weird butterfly belly feeling, I'd squeeze my fist. And every time I do that, it locks that feeling in. So then a week later, I could be walking along, squeeze my fist, and my brain's going to go, oh, it's time to get into peak state. And you'll actually restart and send all those chemicals back to when you first anchored that trigger. So I'd say that little process there is key. You can do that every day, incorporate a bit of breath work as well to help you get in the mood. That process should take 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a really simple thing you can do every morning and night, but it's going to have a massive impact on your training and most importantly when you're actually in the fight.
You know what, mate? I'm choking to go and fight now. I want to try these practices and see what it is, but I'm finished, mate. I said no more. So, but you know what? For the guys out there that are fighting 5 to 10 minutes a day, every other day in the beginning, why not? You know, build it up and let me know. Let me know in the comments. Do this for a few weeks. Come back. Let us know, did it work for you? If not, what was the process? You know, like I said, we're here to try and help everybody expand now. When I want you to get better in all the fighting sports, we're one community. We'll all get better. You know, the talent will get better. Your life will get better. So why not? You know, you try and incorporate these things. Okay, so moving on, we're just going to talk a wee bit about the nervous system, you know, nervous system regulation for fighters. Can you explain what is the nervous system? Because I believe a lot of fighters think that means being nervous.
So the autonomic nervous system is what sends you into that fight or flight mode, fight, flight, or freeze. So your sympathetic nervous system is where you either choose to fight and engage with the threat. Your body has to choose between engaging, running, or some people freeze. So obviously, that's the not ideal situation. You don't want to freeze up in a situation like that. You can identify whether someone has a weak mindset if they're in amongst a load of chaos and they're the ones that freeze or drops to the floor and doesn't know what to do. Like, that's often an indication that they haven't worked on their mindset and haven't instructed their nervous system to work for them. So you've got the sympathetic, which is that side of things. Then you've got the parasympathetic, which is moving closer towards that freeze. But you don't want to go too far. It's like a spectrum. You don't want to go too far to that parasympathetic, because that's where you're going to freeze up and your body's just going to seize up. So you want to get that balance right. Yeah, and that's it in a nutshell. It's related to how nervous you feel, but it's more so to do with like stress as well.
All right, okay. So for me personally, growing up, I'm a lot better now. I'm agitated by the slightest things. Now, that could be something to do with my learning difficulties or whatever, but I get very agitated. However, I've been in a few life and death situations or a few serious incidents where I calm down completely and I'm very calm. And is that something to do with, I guess, the training, maybe through boxing or maybe some mind stuff that's happened? Because every time a serious thing happens, I'm just so relaxed and it slows down for me. But I guess that's not the same for everyone. Like you said, they freeze and don't know what to do.
Yeah, in terms of a daily practice, that's why those 10 minutes are so important, because if you don't spend those 10 minutes looking at yourself, looking within yourself and resetting your benchmark, your base rate is going to be so much higher and more fragile than anyone else. So now if someone says something to me, I don't even see it how I would have seen it 5-6 years ago. Whereas before I would have just been straight into fight mode. Right, what did you say? And I would have been so heightened. I would have got hot. My eyes, my ears would have started ringing. My eyes would have locked onto the person. and I just would have gone into that primal mode, which is just so not needed today. So yeah, if now that I do that practice pretty much every day, when something like that does happen, which is almost inevitable, you're just a lot more easier to control. Your base rate's a lot lower, so it doesn't impact you the way it would someone else who never done any practice, consistently in fight or flight mode. They're the ones that watch the news in the morning, drive to work, bibbing everyone, cutting everyone up, screaming out the window, sitting next to a co-worker they hate, coming home to a wife they hate, eating food they hate with kids they hate, and their whole life just full up with this negativity. And they're the ones that will switch within a moment's notice because they're just so up there in terms of being in that fight or flight mode. All it takes is one thing to knock them off edge. They're basically like an untrained puppy. They're just wild. One thing will set them off. So you just got to sort of get yourself to sit down, relax, and work on your own mindset to stop that from happening.
So I was going to ask about a fighter and how they can identify how their nervous system is dysregulated, but I guess it's pretty much what you just said there.
Yeah, you'll know. Again, it goes back to being aware of your own self, because some people are just like under a hypnosis where they'll never know any different, so they'll never be able to see the contrast. But for me, I know when my nervous system is in a weird place is when I start wanting to eat more. Because again, that stress spikes up your sugar levels and stuff, and you want to eat more insulin, and it has a chain reaction. So when I want to eat more, like junk food, for example, or when I just feel a little bit ratty or a bit more reactive, that's when I know my nervous system is sort of not where it needs to be. So the fix for that for me is like the Wim Hof style breath work, just 30 breaths, like 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 30 times, and then hold your breath at the end for 1 minute. That's more than enough for me just to click pause and regulate myself back down.
Yeah, and anybody that's listening, I've done the same Wim Hof breathing exercise. I've done it before ice baths, and for me, I'll be honest, I was very much, this is all airy fairy, all that breath work and whatever. Like, I can't say what I thought about it, but
Yeah.
you take the breath in, you do it out, you do this like maybe 5-6 times. You're like, see, a lot of crap, but see if you persist with that, you feel your whole body changing. And I guess it's the same with the mindset stuff. You are going to think it's stupid. You're programmed to think that. You are going to think it's ridiculous and it's not going to work. That's what everybody tells you. But the more you do it, it is going to work, and it is going to put you in the best place to be successful and get everything that you're wanting out of life and your sporting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how do we get in a position where we can sort of train that? Is it just the breaths? Is it what you were saying earlier with the likes of the 10 minutes daily practice?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I'm not rigid with these exercises and these methods. Again, these are not things that I've made up. The only things that I've created is like that rooting method and a blink method visualization, which again is on my Instagram if you want to check that out. But they're the only things I've created. All I've done here is just put these pieces together. So you can just pick whatever works for you and create your own toolkit, whether it's the Wim Hof style breath work, whether it's the more sharper, quicker breathwork style as well, where you're just constantly in, out, and that will send you to another planet essentially. It's the visualization, the meditations, whatever it is, just pick aspects that work for you. Not everyone's the same. People have different intentions. People are at different base rates where they may need to work more on the breath work because their nervous system is sky high and it's just so dysregulated. Whatever works for you, I'd say just pick 2 or 3 things out of like that toolkit that I'm presenting. And yeah, all it should take is 5-10 minutes a day. If you haven't got that, then I don't know what to say to you.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I'm extremely busy. I work a full-time job. I'm 7 until 11 every night. I can find 5 minutes to do something like that.
That's
You
it.
know? So the likes of burnout, injury, maybe even say money stress. Do you think that's linked to the nervous system?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said at the very beginning, I think everything stems from mindset, even as far as that Japanese study I talked about with the food. If your mindset's set up right, you can almost endure anything, whether that's the bad food, bad environment, bad health, whatever it may be. I feel like you can endure it more if your mindset's in the right place, and vice versa as well.
I agree with what you just said there as well, because I'm someone who gets injured no matter what I do,
Yeah.
right? And then you can probably maybe even see my mindset there in the way I've said that. But if I go to the gym, I'm getting injured. If I play sports, I'm getting injured. I've done my ACL twice, meniscus twice,
Yeah.
everything. I want to go back to sports, not boxing, just recreational football. But
Yeah.
there's such a fear the second I go back, I'm going to get injured. But I guess I make myself injured. So I guess for someone like me, where we're putting this into a practical setting, I need to start telling myself that I'm healthy, that I'm strong, that I'm fit. See myself maybe visualising playing the game, playing the sport, moving, and seeing everything's okay. And
Yeah.
that starts to become a reality.
Well, I put up a video the other day actually on Instagram of Conor McGregor. I don't know whether he knows like the exact terminology for it, but he was basically using submodalities. So he was saying if you ever feel pain, visualize where that pain is in your body and almost refer it to an object or give it a name and visualize yourself like he was talking about, I think, ripping it out of your skin. And then once it's out of your hands and then chucking it away, visualize that bit of pain disappearing. That actually has a massive impact again because your subconscious doesn't realize that process wasn't real. So if you ever have pain in your legs, and I do it, say if I've had a strong leg day, the next day I'll visualize like ripping the pain out of my calves and throwing it away. And you'll be surprised how much that does actually help.
Yeah, you know what? I actually showed my missus that video last night, and I
Yeah.
never realised it was you that posted it. We were like actually watching it, because she's Irish, from Dublin, so we look a lot at the Conor McGregor stuff, and I think massively misunderstood in the terms that in the beginning, especially how in tune he is with his mindset, manifestation.
Yeah.
He got to the peak level of sport, and it wasn't just because of his performance. He put a lot of work and effort into his mindset. Now people have got different opinions on where maybe his mindset's at these days. I guess no one really knows. It's all behind a camera. But these things, i.e., pulling injuries out of your body, telling yourself you're fit, you're healthy, you're a world champion, you are this person happy. If you don't want it in a sporting context, you'll become happy.
Yeah, that's it. It's basically a summary of everything we've said in this whole conversation, isn't it? The way McGregor got there was already saying he was the champion to the point he become more than a champion. He become the double champ. And then he talks about how he's using the submodalities and the unconscious to get rid of pain, improve his skills, mentally rehearse how he's going to knock out Jose Aldo, all of those things. But also linking to what we said about the external stuff. He put too much emphasis on the external and probably hadn't worked on the things that were going to work for him on a long-term basis internally. So he got all those external things using the methods we're talking about here, but because he didn't do that internal work, which I believe is the most important, he fell off the wagon because he got all the external stuff, but the structure, the foundations of his whole internal world wasn't set up right.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy, a lot of times I watch a lot of old Conor McGregor stuff and he was such an inspiration. I used to have a poster of him on my wall, and now I see a lot of the sort of videos that are out, and I'm going to try and be transparent in the sense that you don't know if it's for show. Now, I don't think it is, but you don't know because you are behind a camera and it's a limited scope. But from what is shown, it's sad, it's sad,
Yeah.
I always root for Conor McGregor to sort of come back, and not bad mouthing him. Look, he's done everything he's wanted and he can get anything he wants in life, but it feels like those initial documentaries he's lost himself a bit.
Yeah, that's it. He actually liked one of the posts of one of my old businesses. I had the Manifestation Journal, and he liked and supported that as well. So that was just before things turned a bit wild for him. So he was and probably still is into manifestation, but once you lose that purpose and that future vision, you end up in the now, which is a dangerous place to be in if you're not set up right.
It's easy for us to sit and talk about, like, oh, maybe you've lost yourself, maybe you're this, but that external that he's received, the fruits of his labour, we don't know what that's like, we don't know what it's like to have hundreds of millions in the bank and all that, just walking down the street and everyone in your face and stuff, so we can all comment on it, but at the same time, all you can do is try and prepare yourself as best you can, because everybody that's going to be watching this is in the fighting community wanting to make it as a world champion. But if you do make it as the world champion that you believe that you're going to do, a lot of external things come with that, so you need to make sure you're in the best position possible.
As long as your internal's fine, I feel like anything external is just a byproduct. You can fly by you and not hit you and not impact you as much if your internal structure is set up right.
Talking a wee bit about energetic alignment. Now, to be honest, I don't know too much about this. Do you feel that affects people's performances, that affects where they want to go in their career, and also can a fighter be doing all the right things but still not be aligned?
Yeah, I believe so. I like a sort of reference with like the Matrix idea. I sort of the idea of manifestation and spirituality a little bit further in terms of how I personally feel about certain things. I feel that a lot of the results we get in life are not just based on these practical methods, but I think overall the goal, I don't really talk about this publicly as it scares people off, but the goal of these methods should be to raise your vibration, raise your frequency. I believe the top two frequencies in terms of the highest frequencies are authenticity and love. And now to me, they're the two core values that you should hold. And if you aim towards those two values, I feel like everything else will fall into place. And again, they're two internal values for your internal structure. They're not two external things you can go and get. So I think if you're aiming for those two values internally, you'll be on a high vibration, high frequency. And I feel like that's where everything else comes into play.
What would be the sort of fastest way or a quick way to start shifting your energy to be more aligned?
I think moving more towards those two core values, getting out of the way of yourself and trying to move towards authenticity and love. If those are your two core values that you're aiming for, and you base every decision on whether it gets you closer or further to those core values, I feel like you'll be in for a life-changing experience. If you make those decisions based on that, I feel like you'll go down a completely different path. I did it myself to what I was going down before. I was trying to chase things that weren't authentic and weren't from a place of love. They were from greed, ego, etc. So I feel like by aiming for those two core values, you're naturally going to raise your vibration. And that's where a lot of the magic comes from.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I used to chase a lot of things that I believe would bring me happiness, and to be honest, only really brought me status. We all want to be accepted, and we all want to be looked upon as important. But does that matter really? What's inside? What's going to make you happy? That's the things you should be focusing on.
Yeah.
Okay, so just moving on to business, money, and sort of life outside the ring. Why is money mindset so important? Like, how does that also play into performance in everyday life?
Do you know what? I personally don't think it is money essentially. I think it goes back to, it doesn't have to be money. It could be anything. Like whatever you believe is a higher purpose and a more purpose that resonates more with your core value, whether that's money, girls, cars. If you truly believe that's what you want, that's up to you. That's your decision. Aim towards it and see where that path takes you. For me, I try to take the specifics out of it. I trust that if I aim for authenticity and love and the things that I believe are more authentic to me, like service to other people, the money, the cars, whatever you think is like the be all and end all, can sit in between that journey from where you are now to where you're aiming at. I just feel like it's a byproduct of doing the right thing. So I don't put too much emphasis on aiming for money, because then you end up in a position like McGregor's potentially in, where chasing money, you get the money, what's next? There's always got to be something after that, or something more internally pleasing.
Yeah. You work with a lot of business owners. So what really is your take on building a personal brand, and sort of how important is that for athletes coming through in the fight community?
I think it's massive. And again, it's quite weird to me how athletes don't put enough focus on building a personal brand. Like, when you think you're not only an athlete, which is a huge status and a huge responsibility, but you're also technically a salesman. Because if you're not selling tickets, you've got potentially no promotional value. Therefore, your career is potentially at risk, because if you've got no promotional value, you sort of almost have to rely on a promoter to get you to certain places in the beginning. So to chain reactions of things.
A lot of fighters just want to focus on the fighting, and to a degree I understand that, but at the same time there's tens of thousands of fighters out there, hundreds of thousands if you look across disciplines. You have to stand out. especially in this sort of game, and you have to build your personal brand. Sooner better than later, really. A lot of people maybe do it too late. So, in terms of building a personal brand, you've obviously seen this through a lot of successful people. How would you go about it? If you were now starting off again, you know, a young 18-year-old, what would you do?
I'd just document my journey and be, again, weirdly, it goes back to those two core values, just being my authentic self, documenting my journey, showing people what I'm up to, showing people the challenges and the wins as well. Rather than doing what most people do, which is just share all their wins, whether they're inflated or not. And it just creates a really weird dissonance between the truth and how people perceive you. It just starts getting weird. I've been there before where I've only shown the wins, and you can just tell it doesn't feel authentic. It comes across really strange when you're just posting wins. So if you can post the downsides as well, a lot of people like to live vicariously through online creators. So if they can watch a boxer, for example, in their training camps, it's potentially something they've never seen before.
Of course, there's a high demand for that sort of thing, a day in the life and what you're getting up to. Now, if you're a professional boxer, you're doing this training every day, but most people aren't professional boxer or professional jiu-jitsu or whatever, so they want to see what that's like. They want to live a piece of that life. But like you said there, it's not all wins. You know, you need to show the highs, you need to show the lows, and if you're real with that, it'll resonate to so many people. And then even that itself can help to change your lifestyle, your income, the opportunities that you get then within your professional sport.
Yeah, that's it. It's happened to me the past year when I've been more authentic to myself and showing that I really care about the work I'm doing. Like my following's almost doubled. I don't have a big following, but that to me is a massive sign. If your following doubles just by a few posts of you being authentic and showing how you care about the work you're doing, people will resonate with it. And like they say, build it and they will come.
I'm sort of similar there. Like, I just wanted to build this, right, and I'm all about the company, but I've started to now be a bit more real about why I'm wanting to build it. And personally, it's because I started boxing at the age of 7 and I wasn't taken care of. My body's fell apart. I had to stop boxing before I got started. Really had a lot of potential, and then to the point I wasn't taken care of. So I want to create a brand from a boxer for the boxer, but all the other fight community, and take care of them. And since I've started showing why I'm creating these socks, why I'm bringing out certain tops, why I want to bring psychology and therapy and everything to the everyday fighter, I think people are resonating a lot more now. They're seeing, oh, well, it's not just a company, it's actually someone who's been through this and wants to take care of everybody else. And then, of course, you've got financial, where I want to be able to take care of my family. But as a young boxer wanting to go to this level and not being able to get there, it's now the next best thing for me to try and help people up to get to that level themselves.
Yeah, that's it. They do say if you've got a strong why, you can withstand any how. And I feel like if you do show that why, and that why is so strong to you, I feel like people will resonate with it and they'll want to join you on the journey and support you.
So just finishing up, mate, we'll just do a very quick rapid fire. Right? If you could mentor a 19-year-old, what would be the one thing you'd teach them that most coaches don't?
I teach them it all starts within and they don't need to look externally. It all begins in the mind.
What's one subconscious belief that every fighter should rewire immediately?
They should rewire the thought that they're not good enough and that they're already a champion or wherever they want to be. They're already there before.
What's one book that changed your life?
It's a book by Joe Dispenza called Breaking the Habits of Being Yourself.
What's one sentence or quote that you live by?
If only they knew. That's my favourite quote because it sort of positions yourself as an underdog but shows people subtly that there's more to you than they think.
Where can people find you, and also what's next for yourself?
So you can find me on Instagram at Ted Lawler. Coming next, I've got a massive free wellness hub for young people in the health and fitness space called If Only They Knew. It's been dubbed the Netflix for mental fitness. So we've got exclusive content from elite level athletes and experts. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Yeah, mate, I just want to thank you for coming on today. I feel like that was a lot of value for the fight community and it's been great having a chat with you.
No, perfect, mate. I really appreciate the time. It's been good.
So guys, everyone, if you've made it to the end of this video, then you're already in a better place than what you were when you started. Try and take some of these methods, some of these practices, implement it into your everyday life, and I promise you, your fight game and also where you are mentally and how you experience every scenario is going to improve. It's going to get better. I just want to say thank you, and I want you to subscribe if you've not subscribed for more boxing content, and have another episode coming out next week.